Our third and final speaker, before we go to Jess, I would like just to first show you a short video clip.
Every race is different. You can never be fully prepared for a course. Always respect the river. If you fight against the water, you will lose. I compete for the time, but I race for the feeling, that sensation, the power. It takes my whole body to turn through a gate, starting at my feet, through my core, to my arms. If I hit a gate, I can't think about it. The race isn't over until that line is crossed. The conditions can change in an instant. I have to be able to react and adapt in the moment. It's my instinct to take risks.
I want to take up the sport. That's fantastic. Jess Fox has just returned from Europe only a couple of weeks ago, where she won gold in the K1 singles women's at the 2017 International Canoeing Federation Canoe Slalom World Championships in France. And she was more than 4 seconds ahead of her rival from Slovakia. The passion for paddling competitively is part of Jess's DNA, with her mum Miriam winning a bronze medal for France in Atlanta in 1996, and her dad Richard, a 5-time world champion. Jess started paddling competitively in 2006 in both the kayak single event K1 and the canoe single event C1, and has not looked back. She is, as I've said, a 2-time Olympic medalist, winning silver in the K1 women's at the London 2012 Olympics, and recently bronze in Rio in 2016. She became world number 1 in the C1 singles women's in 2013, at such a young age, and created history in 2014 by becoming the first woman to win 2 events, the K1 women's and C1 single women's world titles. She was chosen by the International Olympic Committee as the Australian Young Ambassador to lead the Australian Youth Olympic team in 2014, and she is now a member of the AOC Athletes Commission and the ICF Athletes Commission. She is now preparing for the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games with the support of her sponsors, as you saw, Red Bull, Rebel Sport, Toyota Australia and Southlands Shopping Centre in Penrith. Please welcome the Penrith paddler, Jess Fox.
Thank you for that introduction. It's been really interesting to get an insight into the sports marketing industry, and now we've looked at the community side, the major events, and I'll show you a little bit about the elite sport, the challenges in my sport, the passion that we have, and I guess the business of being an athlete. So I had a little intro there, but I'll show you who I am. I think I'm a pretty normal 23-year-old who just happens to do some whitewater kayaking and gets to travel the world, and I'm a very keen traveller. I've been able to experience some beautiful places through my sport, and it's given me some incredible opportunities. I'm a student. I'm studying psychology and communications at Swinburne online because I travel so much, but I want to be able to balance the two. I think it's super important to have a career after my sporting career and to set myself up. It's always been a priority. I'm a public speaker. I've done a lot of schools. I've done some corporate. It's a new challenge. I'm a sister, a teammate, a leader in my sport, and passionate about getting more kids active, more people into the sport of canoeing. I'm a dog lover. If you don't follow me on social media, you're missing out on a weekly dog selfie. And more recently, I'd also describe myself as a sous chef. I was on Hell's Kitchen on Channel 7 earlier this year, and it's definitely developed a passion for cooking. But I'm mostly known as the curly-haired girl from Penrith who does whitewater kayaking, and I go down those red and green gates. It's not to be confused with rowing. I think a lot of people see the sport and it's impressive, it's dynamic, it's exciting, and it is quite tough for Australian paddlers to compete on the international stage. There are a few challenges for Aussie paddlers because we've only got one whitewater venue in Australia, and that's in Penrith. So the facilities are quite far for people from Perth, from Melbourne. There are incredible places to train, to learn to paddle, but to progress you've got to travel. It's expensive. We've got to have some really committed parents, which we have so many, and it's amazing to see that. And I guess logistically it can be a nightmare. Then there are some personal challenges that I've had to face as an athlete. But this is my stomping ground in Penrith, where I train day in, day out. It's a world-class venue, and we're so lucky to have the Olympic venue from 2000. It would be amazing to have another whitewater course in Australia, in Melbourne or in Perth. In Europe, there are 47 whitewater courses. France has 15. So that's why we have to go overseas. We have to compete with them. We have to get the experience elsewhere. And it means that we travel a lot, and that can be a massive nightmare. That's just our team in the airport, and on the right is what I bring to Europe every time I go. And actually, we have so much trouble with airlines. On the way home, my boats didn't even get on the plane. So it can be a massive struggle, a massive mission, but we have to make do, we have to adapt. We do it because we love it, and that's, I think, the passion behind it, the enjoyment. You've got to do what you've got to do. This is my story, I guess, how I got into the sport. Both my parents competed for Great Britain, my dad, and my mum for France. And I was born in a kayak in the south of France. My mum went straight back to training, so I grew up in the pram on the riverbank following her as she trained for the '96 Olympics, which it turned out she was pregnant with my sister and found out the day before her race. So it seems like we were destined to be on the river. We moved to Australia from France for the 2000 Olympics. My parents got jobs for coaching the Australian team for the Olympics. And it's a bit of a family passion. We were supposed to stay 2 years, and it's been 20. We've made our life in Australia. And this is our family tradition. Every Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve, we get on the water all together. Mum doesn't paddle that much anymore, so she's pretty terrified of the rapids. And Dad, even though he's in his mid-50s, thinks he can pull off moves that the 20-year-olds do. And my younger sister is on the team as well. Mum's our coach, and it's really special to share that with them. And actually, my younger cousin Mark, who lives in Melbourne, has just started, so it's pretty cool to share that with the family. I wasn't always set on paddling. I wanted to be a swimmer, a gymnast. I played netball, I played soccer. I grew up in a sporty family, and we were always going to do sport, every sport. But I didn't want to do what my parents did because that seemed pretty lame. And growing up in an Olympic family around elite sport, I knew what the Olympics were. And in 2004 and 2008, we were glued to the TV watching the games. My parents went as coaches, and this is at the welcome home ceremony. We were there to welcome them home, but really to get as many autographs as we could, to see all these amazing champions. And this is where I met Anna Mears. I'm 10 years old in this picture, and she just won the Olympic gold medal for cycling, and she'd put it around my neck and planted the seed, the Olympic seed. This was one moment where I thought, I want to be a part of this. I want to go to the Olympic Games and be a part of this massive sporting moment, this celebration of sport. But as I said, I was doing all these different sports, so I didn't know which sport I wanted to do. And in 2005, I broke my arm, and my physio suggested I get back into a kayak for rehab. So I did, and it was absolutely terrifying and exhilarating, and I was out of control, and I loved the adrenaline rush. I loved learning to master the rapids. And I made the Australian team a few years later and competed at the Youth Olympic Games, and that was my first taste of international competition and fueled that fire to get to the Olympic Games. So I was already dreaming of 2012, but I still had to do my HSC. As I said before, education has always been really important to me, and I knew that I probably wouldn't make $4 million like they do in tennis, so I wanted to get a really good ATAR. I wrote on a piece of paper 97.5 because that seemed like a massive goal, and London 2012, knowing that I had a few months after my exams to get ready for those selection trials. And that was a piece of paper. Obviously, I didn't take art in my final exams, but that was a piece of paper that symbolised my goals, my dreams. These were really big dreams. Only one woman can represent Australia at the Olympics. And I saw that every morning when I woke up. I saw that before I went training, when I got up early to do some study. It was a reminder of why I didn't want to go to all those parties and drink alcohol like so many people my age were doing. It was the choices I was making to get me to that goal. And in the end, I scored 99.1 ATAR and was first in the state for PDHPE, and a few months later qualified for London 2012. And that was the first time that I realised the power of goal setting, of visualisation. I think back and go, why didn't I write 99.9 and gold? You know, it really showed me that what you see every day, it's a constant reminder, and just never to limit myself. So getting to London 2012 was a dream in itself. It didn't start out so well. As you can see down the bottom, I capsized in my first run, but I came back to qualify for the final. I was 18 in my first Olympic final with 15,000 people in this crowd in London. It was an incredible atmosphere, really electric, powerful. I was racing world champions, World Cup winners, Olympic champions, one of whom raced against my mum in '96. And I was calm, I was excited, I was so proud to represent Australia. And in that race in London, I just paddled to my ability. I just did the run that I could do, and I was so proud crossing that finish line because I'd done my best. If I'd finished 8th, I would have been so proud. And somehow everything aligned that day. Some of the best girls stuffed up, and I found myself in a silver medal position. And it was an incredible moment. I remember leaving going, how am I going to top this? I've won an Olympic medal. I met the royals, and I flew business class next to Liesl Jones and Livy Trickett, like bucket list moments. And it was just, the best way to spend my 18th birthday. And after that, 4 years on, I was like, Rio is in sight. There were world championships in between, and every year it was about bettering myself, finding ways to improve. What is the point of difference? What is my asset? Who is my asset? And it's the Queen, aka Mum, aka the boss, the coach. She knows how to push me. She tires me out, literally. She is a mentor and my biggest inspiration. And she's taught me to be a sponge, to learn and be inspired from every field, from everyone, and always be myself. I try and paddle like the boys. I try and copy them, but I do it in my style because girls do it better. You've got to add that element. You've got to stay true to yourself. And then it's the 1%ers. What are those little things that I can do every day that are going to make a difference? And for me, it was RACE, that acronym, respecting the goals, the people who support us, the competitors, the water, the attitude of being really positive, coming to training and being purposeful every day. Creativity, thinking outside the box, adapting, and excellence. And if I can do all those little things and strive for excellence every day, then I can keep improving. And sometimes it all feels too hard. Sometimes the coach pushes you too hard, you're exhausted. This day in Rio was probably the toughest day. As you can see, I'm collapsed on that conveyor belt taking me to the top. It is a long road to the top. And I was exhausted mentally, physically. The training session wasn't going well. We were doing 10 full runs, so race runs, not much rest between, and I'd done 8 that were really average. And I got to the top and she said to me, "This is the Olympic final, you've got to pull something out here." I was like, how do you expect me to do that after this massive session? And there's this internal battle of, I'm too tired versus I know I can do this. This is good for me. And those last 2 runs were the best runs of the whole session. And it just made me realize that it is all mental. You know, whatever it is, the fatigue, as long as I want it badly enough, I can make something out of it. And no matter how bad the day is, how bad the week is, how bad the session is, if you can find something positive, if you can turn it around, even if it's just 1 run out of 10, then you can take something positive away from it. And Rio 2016, to get there was incredible. To win another Olympic medal was a dream, and it was chaotic. Compared to London, Rio was chaos. It was vibrant, it was exciting, and it was full of challenges, and a lot of them we couldn't control. It taught me a lot about resilience. So many things happened in Rio that we couldn't control, and like in our sport, I had to adapt. I had to make the best out of every situation. You know, my boat didn't arrive from the plane. I broke my paddle, so I had to borrow gear. I had to adapt. We had village problems and buses that got lost and made us miss training. First world problems. There was a lot worse happening in Rio. I had a really bad back injury where I couldn't train, so I'd visualize. I'd try and learn and do something else that would still get me closer to my goal. I one day laid down in the grass to stretch, got bitten by 3 ants that, you know, compared to an Australian bull ant, look pathetic, so I didn't think anything of it. 5 minutes later, I'm rubbing my eyes, I couldn't see, I was itchy all over, almost needed to go to hospital. Thankfully, I just laughed about how hilarious I looked and the fact that I'd learned that between the semi and the final, I would not sit down in that grass. So it was about finding a good, positive situation out of what was happening and learning from it. And sometimes the challenges, I think we can control, we can face them head on. One of them for me was fear, overcoming fear. And I'll always remember sitting on the top of the biggest drop in Europe in Slovenia. I was about 17, and I'd just been down 4 times and gotten smashed and hammered in this wave down the bottom, and I knew it was going to happen again. And it did. And I got out, I was crying, I was upset, frustrated, sore, and Dad said, all right, go back up. And I was like, you're not the coach. And he's like, go back up. And I'm like, what kind of parent tells their 17-year-old daughter to go back up to the top of what's like a waterfall and do it again? But deep down I knew that I had to do it, and that it was important for me to do it once more, to get back on the horse, or it would gnaw at me, it would frustrate me, and it would affect me in the future. And doing it again definitely made it all worth it, and it makes me realize that whatever it is that scares me most, whatever it is that is challenging me, I need to face it head on. And the second is overcoming disappointment. As an athlete, we have massive highs and big lows, and when you don't perform to your standard, when you don't perform the way you want to, the way you've trained, it is the biggest disappointment. And just last week, I was in France for the World Championships. I was the favourite to win the C1 event. I was there to win 2. I wanted to do the double. And the first event was the C1, where I was world number 1. And in that final, I made not 1, but 4 mistakes, and I came 6th. And I was absolutely devastated, just shattered. I couldn't believe what had happened. I was in shock. I finished the race. I congratulated the girls in the medal positions. I signed autographs. I did my interviews, and I went home and I just cried, and I was exhausted and drained. And I had to ask myself those tough questions, like what to have for dinner, and reflect and analyze. A disappointment could take everything out of me. I had another race the next day. Was it going to make me exhausted and make me collapse the next day, or was I going to come back fighting and lift? So rest, recharge, refocus. One of my biggest frustrations with Rio was that it was super windy the day of the final, and I wasn't able to unleash all my energy, race and express myself like I had in training because it was windy. I was safe, I was cautious, but I got a medal. And at the Worlds for that K1 race, I knew that I had to take the risks. I knew that I had to unleash myself and feel the freedom. I had to keep it simple, like at the Olympics in 2012. And I had to trust my preparation. And I had to be myself. I couldn't copy anyone else. I couldn't follow anyone else's race plan. I had to be me, be myself. And finishing that race run was possibly one of the proudest moments, because I'd done all the work and I'd unleashed all that energy and raced with freedom. And jumping up on that podium after the defeat of the day before in the C1 was so, so special. And as it says, victory is sweetest when you've known defeat, when you've overcome challenges. And I guess to finish up, I want to talk a little bit about the fact that as an athlete in an Olympic sport, as a female athlete, we don't do it for the money, for awards, for fame. We do it because it's a passion, because it's these moments that define our character, that help us grow as people. And I've had the chance to experience some incredible moments, meet amazing people. And we've had the support of the AIS, NSWIS, Australian Canoeing, in helping us at home prepare for these big events. But it's also to have the support of sponsors who believe in you in a small sport as an elite athlete, to chase your passion, to do your best, to, I guess, grow as a person, inspire others, get more people into sport. I guess these are a few things that I think of as an athlete in building my brand and my image. It's been super tough over the last, 6 years to get to this level. And I've been fortunate to have a manager in Graham Chapman, who's helped me find sponsors, who's helped me build my brand. But it's been about branding. So in Australia, the sport isn't that big, but it's growing. But overseas, it's televised. We've got competitions throughout, 6 months of the year. We spend a lot of time overseas. So I've got to be visible. I've got to promote the sponsors and our supporters with the government and those who help us. And this is my race car. It's got to look professional. Then it's the values that I want to project as an athlete and as a person. As an athlete, we have a responsibility. We're representing our country. We're representing our clubs, our communities, the people who support us. And I want to inspire the next generation of girls, of boys, inspire people in my community. And that's through my values, through sportsmanship, through the respect, the friendship. It's business on the start line, but at the end of a race, we're always there high-fiving, celebrating each other's success and improvements. And it's about excellence, the way we hold ourselves on the water and the way we push ourselves. And finally, it's content. And this is probably a really challenging part for athletes, because a lot is happening on social media now. We've got to be present. We've got to be posting a lot. We've got to be getting those angles, getting the shot, however awkward and horrible it looks, and showing the world what we do, insight into our training regime, our competitions, and also the human side of us. So cool stories, vlogs, blogs, GoPro's point of view. But where's the balance? We've got to find the balance. When are we doing too much that it's taking away from our training and our competition? There's been a few instances that I can think of, in London, where social media was so big that some athletes really struggled to perform because that's all they thought about. But it's a massive tool that we can use to promote ourselves, our sport, and build our brands. So I guess for me, that's it from me. But what I wanted to close on is that it is a growing industry. It is a struggle for some Olympic athletes who only get exposure every 4 years, but it's about building throughout those 4 years to work with the media, to work with brands and sponsors, to promote what it is that we do in our sport. And it's definitely a passion of mine, and I feel really fortunate to be in this industry, to keep pushing myself towards Tokyo. So thank you for listening, and a little plug for my socials if you want dog selfies and other stuff. But thank you for having me, and I'll let you all get to work, and hope you've had a great marketing function.